Come one, come all across the seven kingdoms and the free cities. We are right back here on an evolved review. We're reviewing House of the Dragon. I committed to every single episode. I'm your host, James Caleb Kitchens, and with me today, his first time appearing on the program, I have a very special guest. Please welcome Stanos Douglas.
What's up? What's up? Hey, how's everyone doing, man? Ready to get this show on the road?
Yeah, man, it has it's been a minute, and actually, I've been seeing you post about the show and everything, and I was like, man, we got to have him on. You avoided the Stan the Man nickname. That's the trap. That's it's like if your name's Stan, that's the trap to fall into. But Stanos is clever, man. When you first started using that, I was like, that's really cool.
Yeah, man. I used to do this standing man thing for a long time, and like you said, man, it's everybody uses that, and then I like following Marvel comics, and then seeing Thanos in actual real time in Infinity War. It instantly snapped. I was like, oh yeah, I got to take that because he was definitely like my favorite. So
Yeah, I got you. So this is episode 2 we're going to be reviewing today, House of the Dragon. So we're about a week in here of kind of the craze from Game of Thrones coming back from the dead. What was your kind of experience with Game of Thrones? Like, were you like watching it from day one? Did you jump on the bandwagon later on?
So actually, my ex put me on it. So I think I got in probably maybe around the end of the first season or end of the second season. I can't remember. I know whenever I watched like the first few episodes, I was an instant fan. So I think I binge watched the entire first season in like a day. And then I was caught up by the time it was showing regularly every Sunday for the second season. So yeah, so for the most part, mostly from the beginning.
I'll tell you, those waits between those seasons were horrible. Because you get like 10 weeks and then you got to wait like, sometimes it was, the rest of the year. Sometimes you'd have to wait like 42 weeks or so. Sometimes it'd be like a year and a half between seasons.
Yeah, yeah, no, you're right about that, and it definitely, especially when it ends on like a really big cliffhanger, something major happening. Like for instance, the end of season one with Ned Stark dying, is like you got to wait all the way to the next season to see what's gonna happen next. Like that's a big thing to happen, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I was somebody who had read the books, so for those first couple of seasons, I had that just incredible satisfaction of like seeing my, because I usually would have friends over to watch it or whatever, and like
mhm.
seeing their faces and the way they would react to things, and everybody be like, "Yeah, Ned Stark's my favorite character,"
Oh,
you know, can't wait for him to take down the Lannisters and all this, and I would just be like, "Yeah, man, I'm telling you, everybody loves Ned Stark." Because you don't want to give it away.
right,
Um,
right.
but it was really something else. The craze from Game of Thrones back then. So you watching it from the beginning, and Game of Thrones had a tendency of like the ninth episode would really be like the real season finale,
Yes,
and then the
absolutely.
last one would set up something crazy for the next season. Then we'd have to wait.
Yes, yes, and honestly, I've kind of noticed that with HBO shows in general, that's kind of like their formula, where the second to the last episode is the biggest ones.
Yeah, and they did that with Westworld this last season, which
Exactly.
I'm going to tell you, you're the only reason I started watching that show again. Uh,
Yeah, a lot of people fell off of it after season three, and I like season three. It strayed a little bit too far from what they were initially doing, but they kind of reeled it back in with the season, so I was happy about that.
See, I actually kind of had the opposite reaction. Like, I stopped watching after season 2
Oh, really?
because I did not like season 2 at all. And
Oh man, I
then,
love season two.
yeah, I could not stand it because I felt like they literally just copied season 1, but like it wasn't as good, because you can't beat the original.
That's
And
fair.
then season 3, I actually liked that they kind of broke that formula and did something else with it. And
Mm-hmm.
then season 4, I thought was almost as good, if not as good as season 1, because it
Agreed.
was it was its own thing, but it was still like it didn't go too far from the original concept.
No, and then they did a lot of tying back in to the first season. So, man, especially that the last 15 minutes of the episode, my God, man.
Yeah, I mean, if Aaron Paul wasn't already famous for his role in Breaking Bad, I think that would have been his breakout role because he absolutely nailed it in that show.
He killed it in season 4 as well. Oh my God, he
Yeah,
was the star of the season.
yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, at just on every level. I mean, it was like every time you see him on screen, you don't want to look away.
No,
You
not
know.
at all. No, he nailed it.
So one more thing I got to ask you about Game of Thrones before we get on House of the Dragon.
Okay.
How what was your reaction to season 8?
Oh man, such an emotional roller coaster. Um, I was probably in the same boat of people who were disappointed with how some of the storylines tied up. Um, Now I will give a hot take. One of the things that a lot of people disagree with was Daenerys becoming the Mad Queen and how she handled burning down the entire city and stuff. I actually was on her side on that. I mean, they gave her more than enough reason to do that, even though it was rash decision, and she was very much like more calculated leading up to that point. So for her to just snap like that, but at the end of it, I mean, it made her human in that point. Like it's like, hey man, I just watched my best friend get her head chopped off right in front of me, killed two of my dragons. Well, technically, y'all weren't responsible for the first one, but still, I'm putting that on y'all as well. And I'm ready to go to war about this. Clearly, Cersei doesn't care about nothing about this diplomacy, so I don't either. Yeah, all of that's out the window. We going for war.
I could see it. I think with Danny, it was more of like her whole character arc was like her not being that, and then so
Right.
for her to become that, like I disagreed with it, but I thought it made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like for her to go have all these years where she's fighting all these like battles and she's overcome all these things, and then finally she hits a brick wall and like just in a very short amount of time loses everything. It's like she's worked her whole life to be able to come
Right.
back to Westeros,
Yeah.
and for it to go this poorly for her is like it would drive just about anyone insane. So like I didn't want to see that happen to her,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to like it not making sense, like quite a few other elements of the of season 8 that we don't have to go into, but that
Yeah.
there was with her, I understood where she was coming from as a character.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I mean, I had a love hate relationship with Cersei. It was kind of heartbreaking to see it go down that way, but I actually was more disappointed in how her story arc ended. To be honest with you, I don't know if that's how it ended in the book, but I expected definitely her to put up much more of a fight. She kind of just watched it happen, and I'm like, the whole episode she's just sitting back watching it happen like this. Like that's kind of crazy from the mastermind of the entire series.
So the thing about that, there's no actual ending to the books yet. So
Mm.
around maybe season 5 or 6 of the show, depending on which character arc you're referring to, the books end right there, and the last two books have not come out. Uh,
Oh.
and I don't know if they ever will because the fifth book, which is the most recent one, came out just before season 1 of Game of Thrones aired. And so it's been like 10 years and we don't have a book 6 yet.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so
Okay.
like a lot of things. So in the books, like Stannis is still alive. Uh, you know, um, Catelyn Stark comes back to life. Um, there's quite a few differences in the books from the show. But one thing that they would have to explain in the books, and this happens, this is one of the things that got me in the show too, is like Cersei is conniving, but she's not supposed to be an intelligent character.
Oh,
So it's like she's supposed to be like petty, but she's not supposed to be brilliant. And that's one of the things that really bothered me in the show is like in the first 5 or 6 seasons, Tyrion is always like smarter than her. Like,
Right.
like there's no way she ever could even be on his level from like a brilliance standpoint. But then in like the last two seasons, Tyrion's just dumb, and like Cersei can just outmaneuver him. You know,
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
and like that's what didn't make any sense to me. And in the books, like Cersei is, they make a point that like she's kind of like she would be the one that's like retaking fourth grade. You know what I'm saying? In the books, you know,
Wow, that's
she's
interesting then.
yeah, like she's petty. Like she uses her power and her position to do things, but she doesn't do it from a standpoint where she's like, you know, this actual like mastermind or anything like Littlefinger or Varys or Tyrion.
Gotcha. Okay,
So,
fair enough. Dang, that's
um,
interesting though.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know if I even care what the books have in them at this point in time, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
They may not ever come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
nah, it sounds like it. Shoot, 10 years. Jeez, man.
yeah. So let's get into episode two and talk about some of the pieces that get moved around here because this is so much of. I feel like there's more setup in this episode than there was in the first even.
Absolutely.
As far as the chess pieces like moving on the board because we know how this is gonna we know how Game of Thrones just as a storytelling format goes. So where do you want to start here?
So let's start. Hmm. We'll start with Corlys and his proposition for the king to marry his daughter.
So one thing I want to get your opinion on as a black man, have you seen any of the feedback like the well I don't want to call it backlash because that makes it sound like it's a lot of people, but have you seen the nonsense on the internet where people are like complaining about them casting a black actor for Sir Corliss?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it here and there. Seen probably more so on Twitter, but Twitter, I mean, it's really a negative place
It's
anyway.
toxic,
So
man.
yeah, it's very toxic. So it doesn't really matter what the scenario is; they're gonna find a way to make it negative. So I probably was seeing it more on there. For the most part, a lot of people were praising it, on Facebook and stuff. So
I loved the actors like clapback that he had where
yes.
he was like you guys can believe that like a dragon can fly or whatever. But
I
like
loved it.
for there to be like a wealthy black man in Westeros, that's crazy. I was like, that is so perfect. I honestly, right now, he is my favorite character on the show.
I agree. He has a very strong presence about him, and well, we'll get into that as we go on. But yeah, he's gonna be a very pivotal person. I hope they don't HBO it up and kill him off quickly, but we'll see. We'll see.
He's he has my favorite line in this episode, and we'll get that to it. But I do love how this episode opens where we're like introduced to the crab feeder. We don't know that's his name yet,
Hmm.
but we see his. I guess even the crabs in Westeros love to kill people.
Yeah,
Um,
man. That whole scene is terrifying.
yeah, yeah, because I definitely would not want to go out like that.
No,
Uh,
that's terrible. Being nailed up to a wooden plank and then being eaten alive by crabs is insane.
and they're little tiny crabs, man. It's gonna take a long time. So
Oh man, it made just not to reference a different show, but it made me think of the Sons of Anarchy episode when when Jackson and put the one guy in the ground and they had the fire ants eating him alive. Like that's what it reminded
yep.
me of.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, man, we go off on tangents here all the time. That's a staple. So
Okay.
so it's gonna it won't be the last time that happens.
Cool,
Uh,
cool.
but yeah, Sons of Anarchy is another good one, man. So
That's one of my favorite shows of all time, man.
I haven't seen. They did a spinoff right for that.
Yeah, I actually missed the entire last season. It's good. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's nowhere near the level of Sons of Anarchy, but it's pretty good. They have some pretty good story arcs going on here.
Yeah, I haven't seen the spinoff. Like I almost debated watching this because like the spinoff shows for me are like hit or miss. Like I loved Breaking Bad, but I could never get into like Better Call Saul.
Me either.
So yeah, I mean I think a lot of people like that. I think later in the show I would have maybe gotten into it, but like the first I just it's just so slow to me in the beginning. I never picked it up, but anyway, we
Yeah.
digress. Yeah, this episode, after we're introduced to the crab feeder, we go to the small council meeting, and Lord Corliss busts in, and he's like, "Hey, you guys are in here, fat and happy, talking about the court, and my sailors are being eaten alive, my ships are being burned. This latest one had my banner on it, and not only is he the wealthiest guy in Westeros, but he's
Hmm.
also he's the master of ships. He holds a prominent role on the small council, so he's livid, and
Right.
nobody else really seems to care that much.
Yeah, that is kind of messed up. I mean, he sees a problem and he has well enough resources to resolve it, and they're like, "Nah, we don't want to piss off the other people, so yeah, we're just gonna just let it be what it is for now." Like, no, what do you mean? That's why I have this power to use it. Like, why are we not doing this?
Right? Yeah, and they're like, "Oh well, the crown can just pay you for the ship or whatever." He's like, "It's not about that."
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
he wants the problem solved because I'm imagining not only does he not want to continue to send his goods and his ships into this situation, but these sailors aren't gonna be signing up for this if they know there's a chance they might get staked and eaten alive by crabs.
Exactly.
That's a hell of a work hazard, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I get it. I get it. It's gonna be interesting seeing how they go forward with that. They gotta do something. I mean, clearly it looked like from the scenes for the next episode that's gonna be a big focal point of episode 3. So we'll
Agreed.
see.
And we see how this kind of goes. Like Lord Corliss is sort of the central focus of this episode as far as someone who is um, not necessarily in opposition, but he's someone who has a lot of power and influence, and it seems like the King Viserys is maybe just counting on the fact that because he's married to a Targaryen that like he's got him in the bag. You know what I mean? They're loyal. They're not going anywhere.
Right.
Um, because the next thing we see with Lord Corliss is he proposes what him and his wife Rhaenys, they both kind of give this proposition of what if you married our daughter and united our houses. Now, granted, I'm glad that he turned this down
Yes.
because I believe she's 12
12 years old. And they
and
didn't actually reveal that until the scene actually came about.
right, and it was, I mean, when they were walking in the garden, all I could think of was back to like the last episode where like Viserys was starting to kind of win me over,
Hmm.
especially compared to like all the other kings we've
Yes,
seen.
I agree.
And then there's the infamous birth scene where he makes that decision, and it's just like, oh, never mind.
Yeah. It's like I gotta have my son. And it's like, and then you still yeah, no, that was tough. That was tough, man.
That scene's hard to watch, man. And
Extremely.
my guest that I had on last week, Ace, he made a very like important point about that. I think where he said that the reason that scene is so hard to watch is because that this really happened back then.
Well,
This,
the
you know.
to his point on that, a lot of what happens in this episode also speaks to that as well.
Oh
With
yeah,
unfortunately putting off the one of the real chilling things was she was saying that she wouldn't have to bed the king until she was what 14 or something like that, or her next birthday or something like that. And it was like that is still extremely young, man. And you can tell just the innocence. She didn't understand what that meant. What
right.
bedding the king is just like, oh, I'm gonna have to lay in the bed with them. Like, no, that's not what that means, And it's like, look at this girl. She looked like she should still be playing with dolls and stuff, man.
And I think it was hammered home too because like you can tell that like she's had like a noble upbringing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
she's had like the best education. She's super well spoken for a child. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And you're just like, man, this kid has no idea. Like, this is short of being actual royalty. She may have had like the most I think isolated and maybe like privileged upbringing in
I agree.
Westeros, and
I agree. And
even more so than Rhaenyra, right? Because she's a cupbearer and she's the princess.
yeah, yeah. That's interesting in itself that she went back to being a cupbearer after after the end of the first episode. I'm thinking she's gonna have a little bit more prominent role, and it's like, no, you're going back to serving them. Like, oh, okay. So what changes now with me being the heir to the throne?
I know. That was one of the things I wanted to bring up here too. Is like she gets this coronation where all the lords of Westeros come in and swear fealty to her and everything, and then the next thing that we get is it's like, oh, she's back to serving wine in the small council meeting, and the one time she gives her opinion, it's just like, why don't you cart her off somewhere other than here?
Yes, and the funny thing about that is that leads into the scene right after when Viserys is walking with Lena, when his daughter, how do you pronounce her name? Is it is
Rhaenyra.
Rhaenyra? When Rhaenyra is talking to Rhaenys they're sitting up like on that balcony watching them, and
Yep.
she's kind of giving her the game like, hey, I'm the heir to the throne. Like, listen, they will never let a woman be in charge here. Like, I know that's what you're thinking. I know you went through your ceremony and everything. I'm telling you, from being in this game for this long, you're on borrowed time until he remarries and he does have his son, and then you're back to where you were at before. So I
And
thought that conversation was very powerful, and it speaks a lot to like some of the things that women have gone through over the course of history with trying to get some type of power and really get equal rights for that matter.
it does, absolutely, very well said because she knows like this.
Mm-hmm.
She's the OG here.
Right.
She has been in this situation, like basically the closest thing to a democratic election in the history of Westeros was when they chose between her and Viserys, and
Exactly.
even though Viserys was clearly not the best choice because he was born with a penis, he automatically is the better choice. And I mean, had to realize like the only way that she's gonna have any sort of station is to marry someone who's important. And that is a terrible reflection on the times.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's gonna play a lot into how Renara, how she moves, because as if we go on to later on in the episode, when she pulls up on Damon, with she's like, hey, I know y'all keep trying to keep me at bay with all the y'all trying to distract me, but I'm while I'm the heir to the throne right now, I'm gonna assert my dominance as well. So I kind of like seeing that. So I think she's kind of peeping game and seeing how history has been up to that point, with how women are treated, and she's not going for it.
Agreed. So the scene they kind of shuffle her off to, they're picking a new member of the King's Guard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought that this scene was pretty interesting. And I really loved the way that Rhaenyra like made her decision as to who the new King's Guard should be. What did you think about this?
I mean, it made perfect sense. Again, she's thinking she has a very logical sense about her, and they're obviously playing the politics game as Game of Thrones, as they do. But she's like, no, I want to go with the best option. It's only this guy who has been in actual combat. Why not choose him? He makes the best sense. But they're like, no, but these other people, they're better. And the reason why they're trying to say that these people are better. Again, it's all about the Game of Thrones. That's how they play. It's all politics, and she's not really buying into that. She's looking at things straight from a logical, from a tactical stance. To be honest with you, I mean, it's crazy, but so far she's looking to be one of the most tactical people on the show so far, and she's what, 13, 14?
somewhere in there for sure. And
Yeah.
I love that she was like, okay, which of these knights has actual experience in combat? Because if someone tries to murder me, they're not going to ride up on a horse with a lance and trumpets sounding. Need somebody that's actually been in a battle. And when we saw her, she picks Sir Kristen Cole, who was the knight that beat her uncle Damon
Yeah.
in the in
Hmm.
the in the first episode. Which you knew he was coming back when they gave him that win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she gave him the what is the thing that they hand to the knights? Whatever that is, they showed the scene of her handing that off to him as well.
It's
So
supposed
yeah.
to represent their like favor or whatever.
Okay.
I don't know what the item's actually called. I guess it's like a small wreath.
Okay.
I don't. There may be some, you know, specific tournament name for it, but if there, I don't know.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
um, so I want to switch gears for a minute, and I want to talk about the Hand of the King, Sir Otto Hightower.
Yes. he
This,
is he's playing the
yeah,
Game of Thrones and he's doing it silently.
he man. So in the early parts of the first episode, a lot like Viserys, I really liked this guy. And then we see him basically pawn his daughter off
Hmm.
to go visit the king at night. And then in this episode, man, a lot of people thought he was going to be, kind of a similar type role to Tyrion. And one of the things we praise in our review of the first episode is how they've avoided these like one to one character comparisons.
Yes, I
So it's
agree.
not like this is Danny, this is Tyrion, this is Ned.
Yeah, I agree. I
Um,
agree. I actually like that about this show too, because a lot of shows do that, especially spin-off shows, and I haven't seen that yet on here, so I'm liking that.
Agreed. And this is one of the pitfalls that'd be easy to fall into. But in this episode, man, he is definitely. I think he is more conniving than Littlefinger even was.
Absolutely, and he does it in such a cold way. Like I said, the way on the first episode where he propositioned his daughter to, go comfort the king, and then he kind of keeps nudging her in that direction, up until the decision is made at the end of the second episode, and you can kind of see it on his face, like, he tried to play like, hey, it would make more sense for you to marry Corliss's daughter, but in his mind, he's like, nah. I mean, if you marry my daughter, that puts me in a very, very good position.
And Littlefinger always just came across as this kind of slimy, kind of, conniving guy. But when Otto says it, it sounds like wisdom.
Yes, that's what
And
makes it so cold.
right. Yeah, I mean when he's talking to Viserys, like you mentioned, he's like he knows Viserys so well and he knows that he's always going to take the route that's the least painful for him. It's one
Hmm.
of his major flaws as the king. And so he exploits that, he slips that line in there about, well, I lost my own wife and I can't imagine having to be forced to marry, and it comes across as so genuine and authentic, but we see him moving the pieces. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, and one of the things that ties this episode together, we have a meeting later that we'll get into with Corliss and Damon, and this applies to Otto too. Uh, you know, he says the line that like I said is my favorite in the episode. He says like, we're the second sons of Westeros. We're
Mm,
not given anything. We have to earn who we are.
that was
And
powerful.
it is, man, and it's really it's not just the three of them. Even it's Rhaenyra too. Even though she's not a second born, she still was not entitled to anything at birth. Like she's gonna have to scratch and claw for everything that she gets.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The second sons, that was I really love that line. That was definitely my favorite line of the show as well. I
Yeah,
like that one, and then of course the conversation between Rhaenyra and Rhaenys when they were on the balcony.
yeah, both of those were really good. I I really think, um, yeah, Rhaenys is crafty. Like I think she's very crafty. I think she's pulling the strings too, but
Mhm.
maybe not to the same extent. Like I don't think she wants to see anything happen to Rhaenyra. I think she was just giving it to her straight. Like, listen, this is the this is how it is. I know you don't want to hear this. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm telling you how it is.
Yeah, and a little bit of that was a little cattiness because Rhaenyra was kind of being a little arrogant about it. So it's like, let me humble you, bring you back down to earth a little bit, but then I'm also give you some truth in this as well. So
Yeah, she's like, have you not read about what happened to me? You know, all those books you be carrying around.
right. you
um,
think you think you're special? You think you're the special case? Like, no, that's not how this works.
right. Yeah. What did you think about the way that the whole marriage thing plays out, where it turns out that Viserys, he makes the wedding announcement, but it's not Lena that he's going to marry. It's actually Alicent, who is Otto Hightower's daughter.
It was extremely tacky on his part, and I don't know if he actually realized just how bad it looked. I mean, you underhanded Corliss in front of the council. You basically put your potential queen at odds with her friend, your daughter. There's a lot of things you just did, not realizing it. I mean, you could see the look between when they looked at each other, as well as Otto looking at Cordis. Is It's like you set a lot of you set some enemies up without realizing it, and they're all within your vicinity.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think for Rhaenyra, I think this is the only decision he could have made that was worse, because
Yes,
that's basically her bestie,
exactly.
and now you're going to put her in a position where she has to essentially give birth to a child that is meant to take away basically everything from you.
Hmm.
Um,
And
so,
essentially become her stepmom.
oh
Your
right,
best friend
yeah,
become your stepmom.
yeah, man. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, I'm sure that probably plays very well on Pornhub, but you know, not too well in the courtroom. You know what I mean?
And to take it a step further, man, when I initially seen the first season, I mean the first episode, and she was like they were laying in the yard and she was laying on her lap and they were talking, I actually thought that there was going to be love interest.
I thought that too, and I'm still not entirely convinced that there's not some aspect of that here.
Mm,
Um, and maybe it's just a situation where it wasn't that common at this point in time, and maybe that's why we don't really see um, a lot of it, or maybe they both just kind of know that it's not in the cards for them.
yeah.
There's a lot of different things that it could be. But like I said, I'm still not entirely sold on that not being some aspect of what's happening here.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how they go forward with it, man. That first conversation between those two on the next episode is gonna be a very, very important conversation, man.
And I don't think it's going to go very well.
Oh, it's absolutely not. No, it's not at all. And you can kind of see the innocence on her face as well, because she didn't know that this was happening. She didn't realize just what her dad was kind of signing her up for. She really thought she was just going to comfort the king. She seemed pretty innocent. His little dragon statue breaks. She fixes it, brings it back to him, and he's under pressure to be married again. He doesn't have somebody that he was deemed as suitable or even has an interest in, but she's kind of playing on his heartstrings with being there for him, hearing him out, listening to him talk, being a ear to shoulder to cry on, for the lack of better terms. And I think once he came to, he's like, all right, I got to make a decision quickly, or they're going to really turn this pressure up. So he makes the first decision that he could think so, which is like I said, time's going to tell how good of a decision it is. I don't know if it's going to be that good of a decision, but we'll see.
Do you think that Allison is? Do you think she is playing along with her father's game, or do you think she's playing a game of her own?
I think she. I,
Or it could
I
be
could
that
see it
she's
both. I could see it
oblivious.
both sides. I
Yeah.
I think she's oblivious, but that could be a very big turning point where she kind of did play into this, knowing that this would happen as well. I don't know, man. I mean, Game of Thrones, they're good at um bringing these crazy plot twists on you. So I could see. I mean, it's possible, but as of right now, I feel like she's just oblivious.
Gotcha. Um, it's going to be very interesting to see how they play it going forward for sure.
Yeah.
Because as we said at the beginning, like all the chess pieces are moving. Um, One we haven't really talked about a whole lot because he's really not in this episode a whole lot, but this is like one of the standout characters. It was Damon Targaryen. You know, they
Yes,
cast Matt Smith, who I think is probably the most famous person in the show, actor wise.
I would think
Um,
so.
yeah, I mean he's kind of the Ned Stark here. He's the Sean Bean. They cast him as a renowned actor that people would say, oh yeah, I know that guy. I've seen him other places. But he's such an interesting character because we saw his brutality in episode one,
Hmm.
but here we're seeing different sides of him. He's not a Joffrey or a Ramsay Bolton.
Which is funny that you brought that up because at the end of the first episode, especially once he has the party with the brothel and makes the comment about the air for a day, that's why I was thinking that his character was going. I thought he was going on the lines of like a Ramsey. So I was like, okay. I was like, I'm not mad at it. I mean, you got to have those characters in the show. But I agree with you. He definitely there's still some type of, I don't want to say family loyalty, but understanding of order of things.
I think that from the way that he's very dramatic and he's trying to get him stealing the dragon egg. That was he knew it was going to get Viserys's attention. I think
Yes.
I think he desires that like adoration and everything, and he feels scorned by his family. He
Yeah,
doesn't want to kill them. He wants them to see him in a different light.
I
I
can
think
see that.
ultimately.
I can see
Um,
that.
I love the scene here where I guess this was like Otto's kind of attempt to prove like okay I'm worth my position here. But when he volunteered to go and meet Damon after he stole the dragon egg, I was like, so you're gonna send the guy here that he hates the absolute most to negotiate with him? It's a terrible idea.
It was a terrible idea, and it almost ended very badly for him as well.
I was getting kind of worried because I definitely don't want to see Otto's character. Like I want him to stick around for a while because I want to see what other strings he's going to tug on. But I really
Hmm.
thought for a second I was like, man, this is Game of Thrones. They could kill off every single one of them right now.
Absolutely. And I really thought it was going to happen because he kept pushing Damon, and Damon, once he unsheathed the sword, I was like, all right, now we getting into it. I was like, second episode, let's go.
Yeah, they were on that narrow sort of staircase, and I mean against the dragon, they would have been. I mean, they would have all been burned alive very easily.
Speaking of which, what his dragon is the most interesting dragon that I've seen in the entire series so far because he has this weird shape to his body. He has like a really long neck, and his body is it almost kind of like moves. It moves way more fluid than the other dragons do, even including Cyrax. Cyrax kind of looks like more of the traditional dragons from like the previous season, previous show, Game of Thrones. But his dragon looks extremely unique, and I wonder what that's about.
Yeah, Cyrax definitely seems like because we don't know which dragon, or at least I don't know, and I don't think it's ever been said, but we don't know which dragon produced the eggs that Danny gets.
Right.
in Game of Thrones, and you can definitely tell that that they're like Drogon. They look much more like Cyrax than what is I'm trying to remember his
Yeah,
dragon's
I
name.
can't remember I can't remember his dragon's name. I just remember seeing him at the end of that first episode and I was like, his dragon is freaking awesome. I think he has the best looking dragon.
Somebody's in their car right now screaming at us because they're like, the dragon's name is this. It's Caraxes,
Okay, Caraxes.
and he's awesome. Yeah, I mean he really is. And in the
Yeah.
books that this is based off of, apparently like his dragon is basically considered like in battle, like he's kind of like he's like a warrior dragon. Like he's the dragon that if you see him on the battlefield, you want to leave, even if you also have a
Mhm.
dragon.
Very interesting. Well, that made that scene even more interesting for me now because when Rhaenyra flies in with Cyrax, they're panning down to the bottom. They're seeing the clouds separating, and then she just swoops up. Because at first, I actually didn't realize what was happening there. I thought it was going to be like a completely different dragon and maybe a different character. But once she kind of came out, I was like, all right, that's pretty cool that she's kind of asserting her dominance. But you really just see the scope of how small her dragon is compared to his.
Right. And it's interesting. She knew that he wasn't going to hurt her. I really think that there is a romantic interest between the two of them.
Yeah, when he gave her the necklace in the first episode, I kind of felt that way as well.
Yeah, I don't know about you, man, but I don't give any of my family members necklaces like that and then put it on them in
No,
such a way.
not at all.
I was
Not at
like,
all.
man, yeah. So I don't know if it's like the whole incest thing is something the Targaryens just do. Uh,
Yes.
it's them trying to keep the bloodline pure or whatever. But I don't know if if she's in on it. Like I think she likes Damon, but I don't know if she's like in love with him the way that she is, the way that Damon is in love with her.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you hit on something else about the incest thing because it somebody I was reading I was actually looking at another recap and someone brought up the fact that that Viserys would have been marrying his second cousin. So that's interesting. They're really big on the incest on the show.
Hey, I mean, that was kind of the justification in Game of Thrones for Cersei is she was like the Targaryens did it for years and no one cared, but as soon as we do it, everybody thinks it's like disgusting or whatever, and I'm like, well, pretty sure everybody watching this thinks it's gross, either way,
Yeah.
or at least most. Um, but it's going to be interesting to see that how that goes forward because the relationship dynamic here when he's negotiating with Otto, he's like, if you want this dragon egg, come and take it from me, and I will kill all of you. And then as soon as she shows up, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, dear niece, you can have the egg back.
He just tosses it to her.
Yeah, he's like, fine,
Yeah.
take it.
Speaking of which, him with his mistress, it was very interesting seeing him kind of talk about what his plans were and how taken aback she looked. Like she really just I don't want any of this. I just want to continue being your mistress, And it's like you trying to sign me up to do all this other stuff. Like you want me to marry you, you want me to have your kid. It's like, what are we doing here? Like I didn't know any of this was happening.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost. I'm not gonna say he doesn't feel anything for her. He's definitely using her to an extent. I think he definitely enjoys her companionship, but
Mhm.
this being Game of Thrones, I don't think any of us think that this is going to work out well for her at the end of it.
No,
Um,
yeah, she'll be surprised. She'll be happy. I mean, she'll be lucky if she makes it out to the first season.
I agree. I mean, I think, and she even knows this. She's like, yeah, I mean, they're not going to do anything to you, but what's going to keep them from, nailing me to the outside of the wall or whatever,
Hmm.
Nothing, because nobody's gonna care.
Yeah,
So I love seeing Dragonstone here. I love that the production value on this show. It really Game of Thrones at the time that it was in, I'd say any time after the like maybe the second season, it was considered some of the best production values on television, and I think that
absolutely.
this show one ups it in every way.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree, especially showing that coast where the crab feeder is at. That man, the cinematic on that looks amazing. I can't wait to the next episode.
It was such a good shot. Yeah, I definitely want to see more of that character, and they're making him sort of a villain. I'm like, you're gonna be the guy they take out in season one.
Hmm.
Pissing off a bunch of dragon riders, man. It's not a good look.
Nah, it's not. It definitely looked like they set in their place ablaze on the next episode. Well, when they're showing the scenes for the next episode. So I can't wait, man. I'm ready. That's one thing I hate about watching these things live, man. When you watch that episode and you ready to watch the next one, you gotta wait a whole week, man.
Oh, it's awful. I was out of town and I got home at like some ridiculous hour, like 3 a.m. and I was like, nope, I got to put the episode on. Uh, so it was just like I gotta watch it as soon as I possibly can because you don't want to get spoiled either, and the internet is crazy.
It's terrible.
Um,
And Game of Thrones, I mean, they're probably some of the most notorious fans for doing that because it's so exciting. There's so much stuff happening that you want to talk about it. And yeah, I mean, even in some of my group chats, man, hey, y'all watched it yet? And it's like, nah, I didn't get a chance. Like, here we go, man. All right, cool. I'll wait.
right? Yeah, because it's. I guess when we all used to work in offices and stuff, this would be like the water cooler conversation. I guess we can't call it that anymore. But
Yeah,
the
exactly.
speaking of the production value, this is something I made a post about earlier, and I've seen a lot of people complaining about them. And once again, a lot is relative, but I've seen people complaining about them using the same theme, and I'm just like, why would they change it? It's so catchy and popular, and it just works. Why would you risk changing it and having people hate whatever the new theme is, which I think they most certainly would.
I think it's you make a very good point because I was so when they started the second episode, I didn't remember, so the way they did it, they didn't actually have the intro on the first episode.
Right.
And then at the end of the episode, that's when the music came in, and I got really hyped when that happened. And then when the second episode started and they actually played the intro music with the new cinematics for it, I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is literally the perfect intro for the show. So I'm glad that they didn't change the intro music. The intro music is so iconic. Like, it's one of the best intro music for a show, period. So for them to use it again, but just change the actual cinematics of it, I thought they made a very, very good decision there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, when they played it at the end of the first episode, it like brought out something in me. Like I didn't think I was ever gonna feel like that when I heard that music again. And they played at the end of the first episode, and the hair on my arms was standing up, man. It it
Exactly.
it just was like, they say you can never go home again, but I feel like they're defying that expectation with this show because it feels so much like Game of Thrones before it went completely off the rails as far as the plot.
Agreed. With fresh new characters and storylines, it's beautiful, man. I got a lot of faith in the show, and to be honest with you, I probably was one of those people who weren't as excited about the show when they first announced it because of how the last season ended. But as it got closer to the time and it kind of started revealing certain things about the show, I was like, all right, I'm gonna check it out. And once I watched that first episode, I was like, okay, I'm getting that feeling back from starting Game of Thrones. So I was like, I'm in now.
I was right there with you. When they first announced this show, I was like, I'm done. I don't care. Like, I'm not watching it. They put the first trailer out, and I was like, all right, fine. I'll give them 3 episodes. If they haven't hooked me by the end of the third episode, I'm turning it off. And it didn't even take 15 minutes into the first episode, and I was like, I'm hooked. I'm back in.
I
Uh,
agree. Speaking of which, did you see that they've already renewed this for the second season?
Yeah, that's actually one thing that with a lot of the streaming services that I am very much a fan of them doing these early renewals because, like for instance, Amazon is very good about this. Usually, they'll renew a show for another season, like right as the first episode is coming out, and what that does, it gives them a lot of prep time to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and start making another season because traditionally in television, what they've done is it's like they'll look at they'll let the season be almost over before they greenlight another season, and it's
Right.
like the whole time the show was airing, the production could have already started. It could be less rushed, you know. So I think it's just it's a better situation overall to if you're going to renew the show, do it early so they can go ahead and get those creative juices flowing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
So that they left us with two kind of threads to take into this next episode. The first one being they kind of showed us the crab feeder, so we know he's
Hmm.
going to be an antagonist. Um,
Hmm.
and he looked wicked, man.
Oh my gosh, man, his costume looks phenomenal, man. That mask is, woo, man, that's chilling. Like I could just imagine somebody looking up at that while they're getting eaten alive by crabs. It's just a completely horrifying experience.
Yeah, I mean he looks like a like Sith Lord from Star Wars or something. He just
Yeah,
has this deranged look where you just like you would never want to be in a room with this guy for any
absolutely.
reason. And the other thread, of course, is the I think the juicier one, and that would be the reveal that Lord Corlys isn't talking to Otto. He's not talking to Viserys. He is at Dragonstone, and they actually may be at Lord Corlys' estate. I don't think they're at Dragonstone, but either way, he's talking to Damon.
Yeah, and I mean, he moved on that fast. Like as soon as he made his decision, that was quick. Like he didn't have a second thought about it. So he's making his play. He's making his presence. He's making his presence known on the show as well. He's not taking that and rolling over with it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't blame him as much as like turning to Damon like probably isn't what he wanted to do. He at least knows that Damon will take action, whereas Viserys is a man of inaction. And in this exact scenario, I can't say I blame him for this decision because inaction here is definitely the worst possible outcome for Corlys.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree. And honestly, that's going to be unless Viserys changes how he moves, that's going to ultimately be his demise too.
What do you
This
make of
pat this
this?
pat this passiveness that he has is like I mean,
Oh,
it's not
right.
going it's not going to fare well for him.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be his downfall for sure. Uh, One thing that we kind of glossed over, and this has been a running theme. What do you think about the throne cutting him, and then he like can't heal from it?
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't know what's. I actually forgot about that scene until to one of my friends wrote me about it earlier, and he was just. It looked so disgusting, but man, I didn't. I don't know what that's about, man. I have to look more into that.
Yeah, when they showed the cut on his back in the first season, it almost kind of looked like grayscale, and I was like, oh man, does he have grayscale? But then this week, they showed the throne actually cutting him because in the first episode he says, oh yeah, it's a cut from sitting on the throne, and you're just like, is he making that up? And then you actually see it cut his hand, and then
Hmm.
later on in the episode we got where like his pinky is like rotting off, so it's like
Right.
what is going on here? Does he have some disease where like he can't heal, or is there something with the actual throne?
Mm. That is something I will definitely be keeping an eye on going forward. I didn't actually think about that. Man, yeah, I'm gonna
Well,
have to write that down.
they keep sliding it into the radar. Like they just briefly show it and then they move on, and you're like, there's something there. They're planting seeds for something.
Yeah, no, that's a good catch. I missed that's one of the few things I missed.
Yeah, I pour over this stuff, man. I guess it's part of the job.
Fair
Um,
enough.
so that being said, man, did you have anything else that you wanted to highlight on this episode?
Nah, man, we hit all the points that I wanted to cover, man. So I'm definitely looking forward to episode 3.
So if you had to score this one right now out of 10, where is it sitting for you?
So I would say I think I would give the first episode probably like a 7.5 out of 10. I probably would give this one an 8.
Okay, you like this one more than the first one.
I did like this one more.
Awesome,
There was
awesome.
quite a few scenes that I like. Like I said, the balcony scene that was really powerful for me. The scene, obviously, where she flies in on the dragon and she's talking to her uncle. I actually did like the scene where he made the decision to go with Allison, even though it was messed up. But it was a good scene because it gave you that Game of Thrones feel of the shock and the betrayal. And then of course Damon and Corliss talking at the end. So it was a lot of good moments. And then of course showing the what's going on the coast with the crab feeder.
So interestingly enough, I'm gonna agree with you here. I was thinking around an 8 for this episode as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really enjoyed it for the same reasons that you did. I don't put it up there with the first episode. I actually gave the first episode a 9 last week, because I just thought the pacing and the way it was shot and everything was so well done. Um, but I did really enjoy this episode. I just don't know that I liked it as much as the first one, and maybe that has to do with the fact that the first one told a pretty concise story. Like that episode's like an hour and 15 minutes long, and it
Yeah.
doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
that way. Whereas this one is a lot more setup, which is needed, but it's just we're only getting a little bit of the puzzle right now, for a lot of these character arcs. But to the episode's credit, I'm interested in every single one of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's you make some good points about the first episode. Um I I can understand that. I can understand your point on that.
Well, man, I really want to thank you for having for coming on the show, for agreeing to come on. I was like, man, I really hope he comes on because, I see your social media posts and I see that, like, you catch the things in these episodes that are pretty deep and a lot of people don't catch. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I definitely have to have you back on for another episode this season.
Hey, say no more, man. Just let me know when you want me on and I'm on there.
All right, for sure. Well, thanks again, and thanks to everybody who's stuck with us throughout the episode. Um, we're recording this like the day after, and I should have it up tonight, and you can hear it. Well, you already know if you listen to it right now. You can hear it pretty much anywhere you get your podcast. So, Stan, thanks again, man, and this has been another episode of An Involved Review.
All right, see you later, man.